Good morning, everybody. Very pleased to be here to talk to you this morning. My name's Andy Tauze, and I'm the head of boarding at St John's College in Southsea. And I moved there in September, having previously worked for the last 12 years in another boarding school in Ascot as well. My wife and my children both go to St John's College now, and having worked in boarding schools for a number of years now, really believe in the benefits that you and your children can get from an English education, but also an English boarding education. I've been lucky enough to have jobs in all of the different roles you can have in boarding at the two schools that I've worked at now. So I feel that I'm quite well qualified to talk to you about what you would get from boarding school in England and also the care that your children would have whilst they're with us. So just to say, St John's is a co-ed school, so boys and girls, and it goes right from 2 years old right through to 18 years old, and it's got day pupils and boarders as well. We currently have 600 pupils on our school roll, and of that there are just over 100 boarders. So there's a nice mix, and we've got, the youngest boarder is 10 years old and the oldest boarder is 18 years old. They come from around the world. We have students from, we have one Russian boarder, we have one Russian day pupils. We don't currently have any Ukrainian pupils, which is something we'd like, hopefully after today, to get. We also have pupils from Nigeria, Spain, France, Germany, China and Hong Kong. As it says, it will be the biggest and most important decision you as parents and for your children that you would make in your life, I believe, moving forward. Picking the right school, whether it's to stay here or it's to go to England, picking the right school for your child's needs will be the biggest decision and the biggest influence that they will have in their teenage years and as they move through, and it will affect them for the rest of their lives. So I think it's so important for you to make the right decisions and have all of the information that you need when you make those decisions. So hopefully in the next 15 or 20 minutes I'll be able to help you and guide you on some of those things. So first of all, I've got 4 things to say, and obviously the education that you get whilst you're there and the courses that are offered to your son or daughter will have a major influence on what they can do when they move through, and if it's to stay in England to do their GCSEs, A-levels or university, picking the right school and the courses that they offer, as well as the English support that's available to help improve their English, will have that knock-on effects. And I think it's important just to think about that and know what you would like your son or daughter to do, perhaps when they're older, for their A-levels, before you speak to the schools. Again, the size of the school that you look at, if you are, there's some huge boarding schools in England, 2,000 pupils, but obviously, I feel if you go to one of the bigger schools, you lose your identity a little bit because you are one of a lot of students, whereas actually if you find some slightly smaller schools, then again that will give you an advantage and there'll be more one-to-one care in those schools. Again, the courses that are offered, whether it be GCSEs, IGCSEs, A-levels, International Baccalaureate, again, they will have a big influence on how you move forwards and what university courses you'd like to study when you're older, or your children would. Again, the location of the school, a lot of people like to be in and around London because of the transport links. Whether you're in a city, so St John's is in the middle of a city, Portsmouth, where the Royal Navy's based. It's a nice tourist attraction around there. There's a beach. Other schools are in the middle of the countryside, a long way away from, but again, both schools or both locations offer different advantages. Again, the friendships that you will make, for a number of you in England will be things that last for your whole life. And I've had a number of Ukrainian students in my previous school, Russian students, Estonian students, and the friendships they've made have lasted beyond school, and very often English boarders love to come back to visit, whether they come to the Ukraine or Kiev or Estonia or Moscow or St. Petersburg, wherever they go, there's a great experience. And I think those friendships that you will build up in your time at school will be what contributes to your later life. And within that, I think some of the questions to answer are, how big are the boarding houses that you would go to live in if you were to board in England? Are they big houses of 50? Are they boys and girls, mixed? What age groups are in the houses? It's important to understand those because that will affect your experience whilst you're in England. And all of those streams obviously will lead on to their future, what they would like to do when they're older. But I think the combination of getting the right education for your son, or daughter, whether it's being very selective and a highly academic school, whether it's a school that has a broad range of educational needs, what English support's in place, the location, where it is in the country, will allow them to experience different things in different ways. And again, the friendships that are built will allow them to hopefully be independent and confident as they move through to university education and then into their final careers. And again, I will repeat some of the things I've already spoken about here, but the experiences in general in English schools, there's an expectation, as I'm sure there is here, but you'll be treated like an adult, whether you're 10 years old or you're 18 years old. And the expectations that are placed on you relate to those things. And hopefully with those experiences and expectation and responsibilities will allow your sons or daughters, or you if you are them, to be able to move through and be more confident in later life. The academic teaching, the class sizes, how many children are in each class will be an important factor. The additional support you'll get, especially with a boarding education, you'll have access to teachers before school, after school and in the evenings as well, to a greater or lesser extent. And I think it's important to ask the questions to find out what kind of support do you have between, it's easy between 9 and 5 when school's happening, but actually between 5 and 10 at night. What support's in place for my son or daughter if they've got questions with their homework or they need some extra help? Again, pastoral care is a term that we would say, essentially it means how well do we know your children. And in a school there are so many different members of staff, whether it be teachers, boarding house master, mistress, house parents. Sometimes you have graduates or gap assistants who also help out with boarding. You have academic staff who look after prep and study and homework. You have the cleaners, the laundry teams, the groundsmen, the maintenance team. All of those people will get to know your son or daughter to a certain or a greater or lesser extent. And again, those relationships just help us make sure that, if they're happy or sad, if they're enjoying things, that we can support them in the right way. And again, I think those, the levels of the medical cover as well and the provisions, the security, all of those things add to the care that's offered within the school. Again, the co-curricular program, whether it be drama, art, music, sport, again, important to find out what opportunities there are. And again, that's a great way of improving friendships, but also really developing the English language skills that people have. And linked into that will be evening and weekend activities. What's on offer at school? So at St John's, where currently we have every single evening, there's various activities going on, whether it be sports, there's a fitness suite, we've got a social areas, pool, television, music, and all the pupils can join in with those, as well as a busy weekend. So every single weekend there's a trip that will go out somewhere around the local area or into London or elsewhere. I'll show some pictures in a minute of those. But it's important to find out what is offered and whether there's additional costs for that or everything's included. So at St John's, the fees that you pay cover all of the trips that you do. Again, I've spoken about the two things there, but again, it's important to find out what opportunities, if you're going to be in a boarding school for 2 years, 4 years, what opportunities or responsibilities are available as you get older. We have a head boarder, we also have a head overseas boarder. So that position has a lot of responsibility in the school, and it allows, as there are sixth form students or year 12 and 13 who are doing their A-levels, to be responsible for other students and those management and leadership skills that are developed. So it's important to try and find out about those things at schools as you look around. And again, the independence, being able to organise yourselves when you're away from home, being able to learn how to do your washing if you need to on a daily basis, how to organise yourself, your books, your clothing, transports to the airports. Again, all skills that are really, really important and things you will get from a boarding school education. Again, value for money. It's important that you ask questions when you talk to schools about what is included, what will I get for my money? What else do I need to do? What are there extra uniform charges? Will trips be included? Transfers to and from the airport? You need to think and ask those questions so you're aware of what is included when you pay your fees. And again, I spoke about lifelong friendships, but it's also important to be aware, generally when students go away from home for the first time, they will suffer some kind of homesickness. They will miss home, and often it's very sad for some mums, normally slightly more than dads, who will miss the children and be upset that they are upset whilst they're away. That's very short term. It's normally at the start, when they're there for the first 2 or 4 weeks. They'll get over that, and slowly, as they form more friendships, then they tend to call home less and less, which then makes mum upset again because they aren't calling home enough. But again, it's reassuring when that does happen, that then you know that they are happy and they found their friendship groups whilst they're at home. This is just to show some examples really of things that you can expect from a boarding school education. So we've got, this is a weekend trip that we took part in at the top, where we went to watch a rugby match at the Rugby World Cup. This is house drama. That's a weekend activity with inflatables and a salt course. And again, there's a barbecue that we hold at St John's for all of our parents in September when everyone arrives, just so everyone can get to know each other in that community. This is really just to look at all the different members of staff that you're going to have or experience whilst you're at school. And at St John's we have all of these people in place. And again, it's important that you have that wraparound care, you know, whether it's from 7 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock at night. There are always people around to be contactable by you, but also people that you can speak to and your sons and daughters can. So you have house staff. Generally, they would be the person that you would have the most contact with, whether it be house parents or house master or mistresses. Again, that will be your first port of call. And at St John's, we'll make sure that, you know, every week you have some kind of contact with them, whether it be via email or on the phone. Some schools offer, we have an overseas welfare officer again at St John's. They will be your port of call. He'd arrange all of the English lessons, any transfers backwards and forwards to the airports. Again, parents, 24 hours a day, he's on call for parents across the world to make contact with him if they need to, if there's an emergency at home. And they, you know, for one example, we had to send one of our Nigerian students back home because one of his family members was ill. That was in the middle of the night. So our overseas welfare officer would go to school, get the student, arrange the transport and take them to the airport. Not all schools will offer that, but again, something to bear in mind and think about. Again, I'll go slightly quicker through this. A medical centre, you know, is there a medical centre on site? Is there someone who's resident on site? Are they available 24 hours a day if there's a problem, if your son or daughter are ill? Graduates and gap assistants tend to be slightly younger members of staff, but they tend to organise activities and offer extra support. Heads of year and academic tutors, again, during the school day, they will offer your son or daughter the academic support that they need if they're struggling in certain subjects or certain lessons. Again, they'll be able to arrange extra support around the normal lessons that happen. Buddies is very important when you first arrive. You have somebody who you get to know quite quickly. At St John's, we assign a buddy to the student. They'll make contact during the holidays before you arrive. On the first day, they'll meet you at school. They're often in the room with you or in your house, and they will take you around the school so you get to know where each lesson is, which each room is. Again, it's a daunting experience and very nerve-wracking when you first arrive, but hopefully things like that will allow them just to flow through the school a little bit more easily. Again, counsellors, you know, if there's someone to talk to, again, we have a chaplain at school. Some of the students would prefer to go and talk to them about some issues that they may feel they have. Again, it's important to see if that care is in place at the school in case it's needed. Catering staff, you know, we have a large catering team at St John's, but again, it's somebody you or a number of people you'll see every day, you know, have breakfast, lunch and dinner at school, and you'll get to know those people very well. And again, it's nice to see a friendly face in the mornings, in the evenings. Security staff, again, it's important to find out what provisions there are. You know, St John's, we are in the middle of a city, but we have, you know, security fencing. We're enclosed, the gates. You can't walk into the school just from the street. And it's important to find out that we have security on staff on site throughout the evening. And I think it's important to find out, even though might be in a city, most schools will have a good, you know, CCTV network and security around. Again, if you're in the countryside and you go to a school that's a lot further away, there's less people around, it's a bit more isolated and tend to be a bit more open in those schools. So again, something to think about. Again, maintenance staff, laundry staff, cleaners, Some schools will have laundry that happens every day. At St John's, you can put your washing in the morning, you get it back in the evening in your own box. So you can take that. Other schools, it might be every 2 or 3 days. Again, the important things to check and find out. Do you have a cleaner for each house? Again, St John's, we have a cleaner for every house who will come in every day to clean. But again, things to think about. It just adds to the care that's offered to your son or daughter. And a lot of schools now have an independent listener here. Again, it's somebody they can turn to and talk to who isn't a teacher, who isn't necessarily their house parent. It's just someone who's linked to the school. If they feel they're a bit upset or sad or they've got something to talk to them about, they're in place. And again, it just adds to that care. And as I said, again, the most important thing you'll find is your friendships that you build whilst you're there. And I think that's one of the lovely things about having overseas boarders in our school is it allows not only the overseas boarders to experience the English culture, but it also allows the English boarders to experience people from lots of different countries, nationalities, religions sometimes. And I think it's about that equality and the experience of accepting everybody. And I think as the world expands and it's easier to go around the world, I think those skills of learning to live with other people when you go to university as well, boarding allows you to learn those skills a lot earlier than perhaps you would do if you lived at home with your parents, with your brother or sister. I think that's why I'm so passionate about boarding really, and why my children go to a boarding school as well. Again, some experiences that you would have at an English school. Again, this is our chapel that we have at school. That's our Christmas service. Again, just experiencing different cultures. At the top here, we've got this is our Christmas dinner. So after our chapel service, we go for a formal dinner where everyone has to wear their suits and dress smartly. We had a trip for some ice skating. I'm sure Ukrainian students will be a lot better than the English ones are at ice skating. And down here is our Chinese New Year celebrations. Again, a different cultural experience that I think is important for everyone to have, especially at such a young age. And hopefully here, these will be some questions that perhaps parents and students will think about asking today. And again, it's important that you find out this information. How many other boarders are at schools? Some schools will have a large number of Russian, Ukrainian, possibly Estonian boarders, and they will pick from that pool. So it's important to find out how many there are, because that will affect the experience that your son or daughter has. The ability to speak their native language often detracts from the ability to learn their English. And I think that's something that's important to find out as you move around. And I think, at St John's, we don't have any Ukrainian boarders. We have one Russian girl who will finish school this year. But I think, one of the reasons we're here is to try and find some, suitable, strong students to come. And we only really want to get 1 or 2 in the school. That's all we want. We want to try and spread out and have as many different nationalities as we can, because it adds to everyone's cultural experience rather than having too many from one country. Again, some other things that we've spoken about is what support, in addition to the lessons, will there be for the English language and the learning that goes on. A very, very important factor, because there isn't enough time just in lessons to learn. It's what other support will be offered. Again, what qualifications will they aim to get at the end of their time at school? Are they going to take English formal exam? Will they gain GCSEs, A-levels, International Baccalaureate? Which one of those are they going to be aimed at, and will they get to that point whilst they're at school? Again, important to find out, how much deposit would you have to pay to go to school. Some schools will charge a whole term's fees, essentially around £10,000 or £11,000, and a deposit fee as well. St John's is slightly less. We charge £4,000 deposit, but again, important that you know in your mind how much the cost is going to be up front, because very often you may have to, at some schools, pay £15,000 or £20,000 up front before you actually go to the school. Again, I've spoken about the medical and security provisions on site. Again, important to ask those questions. Here's what I'm just going to show a clip, or our Facebook page. Again, how do you stay in touch with the boarding house or what's going on at school? At St John's, we have this Facebook page, which we update each week. Let me get onto it. Again, just to show parents what we're doing every week at school. Here's the Chinese New Year. And you can see the different activities that we'll do on a weekly basis. And again, it's important to find out, your children will be a long way from home. It will be, very sad at times, but it's nice to see what also they're getting up to. Again, Can you speak to any current boarders or parents? Do schools have Russian or Ukrainian parents that you could perhaps get in contact with and find out about the experience? What fees are included with what you pay? Are there additional charges for trips, etc.? That's an important thing to find out. Exeat weekends, again, you have your normal holidays, but some schools will have an exeat weekend in the middle of the half term. Again, it's important to find out because you'll be responsible for your son or daughter during that time. Again, there's an additional expense. You'd have to pay for a guardian to look after it. St John's, fortunately, we don't have exeat weekends. It just means, there are 6 weekends during the year where actually they'd be at school. At some schools, they'd have to go home. And again, just a few more scholarships. Schools will often offer scholarships, especially at events like this. Important to find out, if your son or daughter excels in a certain area, whether scholarships are available to them. Again, it helps save money. Again, what are the weekend and evening activities like? And finally, how often will you have reports sent home? And how are they sent home? Are they sent home in your native language, or are they sent home in English, or can they be translated? And finally, just a few more photos. Again, a lot of these things will happen outside of lessons, but there's ski trips. We have an overseas trip where we go over and do some charity work in Sri Lanka, sports fixtures, and then end of year proms and dinners. And again, all of those things are offered outside of the normal day-to-day lessons. And again, it's important to find out about those trips because again, it helps improve English skills, friendships, and immersing themselves in the English education. Just one more thing to show, a quick video of all the things I've said so far. I've shown you things to answer, but this is what it's like at St John's. We've put a little video together. One of our boarders wore the video camera around the school day. Again, hopefully it would show you a little bit more of what English school's possibly like. Again, hopefully gives you a little flavour of what English school could be like, and I don't know how different it is from school in Ukraine, but hopefully that will allow you just to think about some things as you walk around today. But thank you very much.